The photograph is taken at 7:42 in the morning on a Tuesday in November, outside the entrance to the Millbrook City Public Library, by a 26-year-old photojournalist named Sasha Orin, who is on assignment covering a story about the city's winter shelter overflow, the annual crisis of bed shortage that arrives each November when the temperature drops below 40 degrees. She is moving along the library block when she sees the man. He is sitting against the library's east wall, in the narrow wedge of morning sunlight that reaches that particular section of sidewalk for approximately 40 minutes each day before the adjacent building's shadow reclaims it. He is sitting very straight. This is the first thing she notices, that among the specific physical postures of people who sleep outside, which tend toward a compressed inward quality, this man sits straight in a way that is not performance. It is simply how he sits. The straightness is old. It belongs to his body the way a habit of decades belongs to a body. He is, she estimates, in his mid to late 60s. His face has the specific weathering of someone who has been outside for a long time, not a seasonal exposure but a years-long one, the kind that becomes the face rather than happening to it. Beside him is a backpack, worn to the seams, and on top of the backpack, placed with a care that is not incidental, placed with the specific deliberate attention of someone for whom this object is the most important thing they carry, a folded flag. An American flag, folded in the precise triangular form that she has seen at military funerals. Sitting on top of a worn backpack on a cold sidewalk in the November morning light. She raises her camera. She takes 3 frames. In the third frame, the man turns his head slightly toward the light, and the light falls on his face in the specific way of that particular 40-minute window each morning, and Sasha Orin takes a photograph that she will later describe as the one where I understood what I was looking at. For days later, Sasha Orin is in the newsroom of the Millbrook City Register, editing the photographs from the shelter overflow assignment, and she opens the frame from the library's east wall and looks at it on a calibrated monitor at full resolution for the first time. She has taken approximately 1,200 photographs in 4 days. She looks at the photograph for a long time. She has been trained by a woman who told her, in her first week, that the photograph you are most likely to underestimate is the one that doesn't immediately announce itself, that the images with the most weight are often the ones that require you to sit with them before you understand what they have captured. The man's face in the photograph has a quality that she cannot immediately name, but that she recognizes. It is the quality of someone who has been somewhere that most people have not been and who carries that place in the specific way of people who cannot set it down, not as wound, not as pride, but as the texture of an experience that has become permanently part of the way they are in space. She has photographed veterans before. She has spent enough time around people whose bearing has been shaped by military service to recognize what military service does to the way a person inhabits their own body. She looks at the flag, the precise triangular fold, the placement on the backpack with that specific deliberate care. She picks up her phone. She calls her editor. "I have a photograph," she says. "I want you to see it before we talk about where it goes." Her editor looks at the photograph on his own monitor for 90 seconds without speaking. Then he says, "Who is this man?" "I don't know," Sasha says. "We need to find out," Paul says. "Before we publish anything." She goes to the winter shelter on Delaney Street and shows the photograph on her phone to the intake coordinator, who looks at it for a long moment and says, "That's Thomas Waverly. He comes in when it gets below freezing. He doesn't always come in. Good man. Very quiet. He helped us move furniture last spring, organized the whole thing without being asked, had everyone working in the right order in about 10 minutes. We joked that he must have been a manager somewhere." She finds Thomas Waverly on the 4th day of looking, at the community meal program at St. Ambrose on Clement Street, where he is sitting at the end of a long table, alone not because no one is near but because the specific quality of solitude he carries makes even a crowded room feel like he has a perimeter. She sits down across from him. She puts her camera on the table face down, which is a deliberate act. She is not here to photograph. She is here to talk. Mr. Waverly, my name is Sasha Orin. I'm a photojournalist with the Millbrook City Register. I took a photograph of you last Tuesday, outside the library. I'd like to talk to you about it, and to ask your permission before we do anything with it. He looks at her. He has, she thinks, the most still eyes she has encountered in 4 years of looking at people through a lens. Not empty, not vacant, but still in the way that things are still when they have decided not to move. He looks at the photograph on her camera screen with the same stillness, and what she sees on his face is not self-consciousness but something closer to recognition, as if the photograph has confirmed something he already knew. That's the flag, he says. Not a question. Yes, she says. My spotter's flag, he says. He died in 1971. I've carried it since. Thomas Waverly is 68 years old. He enlisted at 18 1973 for months before the Paris Peace Accords ended American combat operations in Vietnam, which meant he arrived at a war that was officially concluding and actually not, and spent 2 years in the specific institutional confusion of a military presence that the politicians were calling finished and the soldiers in the field were calling something else. He is not, he tells Sasha Orin, interested in talking about the war. He is interested in talking about the flag. The flag belonged to Corporal James Reyes, called Jimmy, from Tucson, Arizona, who was 22 when he died on September 14, 1971. Jimmy Reyes was the soldier whose personal effects were being sorted when Thomas arrived, and whose folded flag was among them, and for reasons that Thomas cannot fully explain, that he has attempted to explain to himself across 53 years and has arrived at only this, that it was wrong for the flag to go into a box. Thomas took it. Not stole. Took. With the specific distinction of someone who has spent 50 years insisting on that difference because the difference was the whole thing. He carried it through 2 years of military service. He carried it home. He carried it through 30 years of a life that he describes in the specific economy of someone who has learned to contain a great deal in a few words. Married, divorced, worked, 2 children who are in their 30s and who he has not spoken to in 11 years. Not from estrangement but from the specific decision of someone who has decided that their presence in a life would be a disruption rather than a contribution. He has been living outside for 7 years. Not because he cannot find housing. There have been offers, programs, interventions, all of which he has declined, but because the inside of rooms has not felt, for a long time, like where he belongs. The flag, Sasha says. You've carried it the whole time. He deserved to be carried, Thomas says. His family sent it back. Said they didn't want it. Why show it? She says. On top of the backpack in the sun. You could carry it inside the bag. Thomas Waverly looks at her with the still eyes. Because he shouldn't be inside a bag, he says. He should be in the light. Sasha Orin publishes the photograph in the Millbrook City Register on a Friday, with a 600-word article that contains what Thomas Waverly has told her. His name, his service, the flag, what 1971 contains. She does not write about the 7 years on the street, except as context. She writes about the flag. The article's headline is, "A Flag That Belongs in the Light." By Friday evening, the photograph has been shared 60,000 times. By Saturday morning, it is on the front pages of 8 national news outlets. By Saturday afternoon, the number of shares has passed 400,000. The specific quality of the attention being paid to it tells Sasha something that she will later articulate as, people are not sharing a photograph of a homeless veteran. They are sharing a photograph of dignity. Of the specific, inarguable, unperformanceable quality of a person who has not been diminished by what has happened to them, and of the specific uncomfortable question that quality raises about the people who have been walking past him on the sidewalk for 7 years. Her phone has rung 43 times by Saturday evening. 14 are media requests. 6 are from veteran service organizations. And 1 is from a number with a New Mexico area code. And a voicemail that she listens to standing in her apartment kitchen at 9:47 p.m. The voicemail says, in a woman's voice that is controlled in the way of someone managing a significant emotion, My name is Elena Reyes. I think the flag in that photograph belonged to my father. Elena Reyes is 54 years old. She lives in Albuquerque. She is a retired school principal. Her father, Corporal James Reyes of Tucson, Arizona, died on September 14, 1971, in Vietnam when Elena was 2 years old, which means she has no memory of him that is clearer than a photograph. The specific kind of knowledge of a person that is built entirely from images and stories, and the way other people describe a presence that was removed before you were old enough to register its absence as loss rather than simply as the absence of a thing you never had. She had been told, growing up, that her father's flag had been lost, that the military effects had been improperly handled. She had tried, in her 30s, to trace the flag through military records, and the process had hit walls she did not have the resources to get around, and she had eventually let it rest with the specific resignation of someone who has decided that some things remain missing. She had seen the photograph on Saturday morning, and she had looked at the flag in the photograph, the precise triangular fold, the specific dimensions, the particular way the stripes fell across the folds, and she had understood, with the certainty of someone who has spent 53 years imagining an object they never received, that she was looking at her father's flag. Sasha finds Thomas Waverly at the library's east wall and tells him about Elena. Thomas sits in the morning light for a long time without speaking. "She wants to meet me," Sasha says. "She said to tell you that she's not angry. She wants me to make sure you know that first. She's not angry." Thomas looks at the flag. He looks at it the way you look at something you have been carrying for 53 years and have never been certain you had the right to carry. "She should have it," he says. "She said she wants to meet you first," Sasha says, "before she decides what she wants to do with it. She said the flag was her father's, but you knew her father. She never got to." Thomas Waverly is still for a very long time. "I can tell her about him," he says. "I can tell her what he was like." 2 weeks after the photograph is published, Sasha Orin receives an email from a researcher at the National Archives Military Records Center named Dr. Vivian Park, who has been working, since the photograph began circulating, on a question that the image raised for her. The email is 4 paragraphs. Sasha reads it 3 times. Dr. Park has pulled Thomas Waverly's service record. What the record shows, what the photograph, to anyone who looked carefully at the decorations visible on his jacket in the image, was already quietly saying, though nobody had looked carefully enough or known what they were seeing, is that Thomas Waverly is a recipient of the Medal of Honor. He received it in 1974, awarded for actions in Vietnam in 1973, in a ceremony at the White House. Dr. Park has attached a photograph from the White House press pool. A younger version of the man Sasha photographed outside the library, in dress uniform, receiving from the President of the United States the highest military decoration the country awards. The Medal of Honor citation describes what Thomas Waverly did on a specific day in 1973 that saved the lives of 7 people, at direct and extreme risk to his own. He has been sleeping on sidewalks for 7 years. He has been eating at the St. Ambrose meal program. He has been sitting in the morning light outside the library with a folded flag on his backpack, and people have walked past him for 7 years, and none of them knew. He had not told anyone. Sasha calls Thomas Waverly. "Thomas, the archives found your service record." A silence. "They would," he says. "You're a Medal of Honor recipient," she says. "Yes," he says. "You didn't tell me. You didn't ask," he says. "I'm asking now." "It was one day," he says. "I've had a lot of days since then. The medal doesn't make the other days different. It doesn't make the sidewalk softer. It doesn't bring Jimmy back. I didn't tell you because it wasn't the thing I wanted you to know about me." "What did you want me to know?" "About Jimmy," he says. "That he should be in the light. That's what I wanted." The story that runs in the Register on the following Monday, the story that Sasha writes in 18 hours straight, is not a story about a Medal of Honor recipient living on the street. It is a story about a man named Thomas Waverly who has been carrying a flag for 53 years because he believed the person it belonged to deserved to be carried. The Medal of Honor is in the story. It is not the story. The response is not simple. There is the anger, the specific, justified anger of people who understand what it means that a Medal of Honor recipient has been sleeping on a sidewalk and that the country walked past him for 7 years, whose anger is both at the failure of the specific systems that are supposed to prevent this and at the broader, harder, more uncomfortable failure of a collective that has decided it has honored its veterans and has not fully reckoned with what honoring means in practice. There is also the response of veterans, hundreds, eventually thousands, of messages from veterans, many of them also unhoused or struggling, who write variations of the same thing. Not about Thomas Waverly specifically, but about the experience of returning to a country that thanks you for your service and then stops looking at you, and about what it means to have someone finally look, really look, with the kind of attention that sees what is actually there rather than what is comfortable to see. Thomas responds to 3 things. Elena Reyes's call. A letter from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, which he reads and sets aside. And a handwritten note from a 17-year-old girl in Ohio. I didn't know what a Medal of Honor was before this. Now I looked it up. I wanted you to know someone looked it up because of you. That's all. I hope you're okay. He has kept the note. It is in the backpack with the flag. Elena Reyes comes to Millbrook City on a Saturday in December, 3 weeks after the second article runs. Sasha arranges the meeting at the library's east wall, in the morning, at the time when the light reaches that particular section of sidewalk. She does not photograph it. She made this decision before Elena arrived and she holds to it, because some things are not photographs and she knows the difference now, in a way she did not fully know before this assignment. Thomas Waverly is there when Elena arrives. He is sitting as he always sits, straight with the specific old uprightness, and the flag is on the backpack and the morning light is doing what it does for 40 minutes each day in that particular spot. Elena Reyes, when she sees Thomas Waverly, has the specific quality of someone arriving at a destination they have been moving toward for their entire life without knowing where it was. Thomas stands. He picks up the flag. He holds it out to Elena. Elena takes it. She holds it the way you hold what is simply, finally, yours. Neither of them speaks for a long time. Then Elena says, "Tell me about him." Thomas Waverly sits back down. Elena sits beside him on the cold sidewalk, in the morning light that lasts 40 minutes. And Thomas Waverly, who has not told anyone about any of it for 53 years, who said, "I served," and went back to moving the chair, who slept outside because inside felt wrong, who carried a flag for half a century because a man who died at 22 deserved to be in the light. Thomas Waverly begins to talk. Sasha stands back. She watches. She does not raise her camera. She is a photojournalist. She knows that this is the most important image she will ever witness. She knows it does not need to be a photograph. 7 months after the photograph is published, Thomas Waverly is living in a studio apartment on the 4th floor of a building on Clement Street, 3 blocks from the library. He moved there in February, not because any formal intervention produced the conditions for this, but because the building's superintendent, Roy, 64, a Navy veteran who served in the Gulf, had knocked on the door of the St. Ambrose meal program one January morning with a key and had said, "I have an apartment. No programs, no conditions. I read about you. You should have a place. If you want it." Thomas had thought about it for 3 days. He had said yes. The flag is on the wall of the studio apartment. Framed. Not his to keep. Elena Reyes has the flag. What is on the wall is a photograph. A photograph of Elena holding the flag, taken by a passerby who happened to be there and sent the image to Sasha, who passed it to Thomas, who had it printed and framed without explanation, because the explanation is visible in the image. Sasha Orin has received the World Press Photo Award for the original image. She mentions this to Thomas in the brief practical manner she has adopted for their ongoing occasional conversations. which are not warm in any performed sense and are warm in every real sense. He says, "The light was good that morning." "It's good every morning," she says, "for about 40 minutes. "I know," he says. "That's why I was there." The apartment is on the 4th floor. The window faces east. In the morning, for approximately 40 minutes before the adjacent building's shadow arrives, the light comes through at the angle that Thomas Waverly has known about for 7 years, from the other side. He sits in it, straight as he has always sat, the far distance eyes. He sits in the light. He has always known where the light was.